Morning, everyone. Just wait a
Morning.
few more seconds, and we'll get going.
Morning.
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 How you doing?
Morning all.
Okay, so the time's just gone 8:30, so I'm sure we've got a few more to join just yet, but I'll get going if that's okay with everyone. I hope you've managed to stay warm over the last few mornings, and you're not freezing like me this morning who struggled to get their heating going. But there you go. The joys of working from home. But this morning, importantly, is a refocus on complaint management. We've done a number of different events around complaints and ASB and using the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 to solve and resolve those in line with the Ombudsman, but with a number of different types of complaints coming out recently, and I think it being a continuing evolving subject with the rent increases that are happening, some of the unfortunate news in the press around damp and mold issues. What we wanted to show today and showcase is a refresher and a look at how things like inquiry management and complaints start, touch upon some of the damp and mold process work that we've been doing over the recent weeks. But actually, I'm quite excited to actually show you some of the new capabilities that Microsoft have brought out, or that Ollie's going to walk you through, that we think changes the game in terms of not just managing the complaints and providing solution workflow and processes to do so, but actually look using the intelligence of the system to understand where bottlenecks might be, and how to improve that. So an exciting follow-on, I think, from some of our previous sessions and those of you that may or may not have been involved in complaint handling capabilities. So typically, if this is the first session that you've been to of our many sort of breakfast sessions that we run on an 8-weekly basis, myself and Ollie or Ollie typically will go through some of the technology capabilities, as I say, that Microsoft have released, and this is really for everyone in housing to get a better understanding of some of the Microsoft technology and how it can help, and also network with your fellow peers. So as we go through, if you want to use the chat or interact, then please do. We always leave a sort of 10-15 minute session at the end just for a dedicated Q&A, but we're always conscious that whilst we like to think we know quite a lot about housing and working with our customers, we're also quite techie. So if there's words or things that we speak about that you don't quite understand, do let us know. So myself and Ollie, a little bit of background about me. I'm the new business consultant at Crimson, heading up our housing and local regional government and home builder sectors, believe it or not. And my role really is about helping those organisations understand and navigate the opportunity with Microsoft Tech. Ollie, I think a lot of you will have met him if you've been on the calls previously, but just a quick reminder of who you are.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Hi guys. I'm Ollie Sinclair, principal consultant for Crimson. So yeah, I've been involved in all manner of things for housing associations, large enterprise implementations, and really do support Jordan in conversations around what Crimson can do for our customers. So a little bit of background. I've been in business solutions, Microsoft Business Solutions for I think it was like 13-15 years or something, which predominantly is Dynamics CRM, which now was sort of churned into Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. So I sort of bring my expertise and knowledge of that technology to the housing sector.
Thanks, Ollie. And I think it's important to state as well, in terms of what we do, it really is about bringing to life the Microsoft technology for housing associations and for local regional government. Our strategy and our beliefs are that, for a long time, a lot of housing associations and a lot of councils, have got large either housing management systems for the housing arms and or that run their business. Our view is that actually, whilst you can do a lot with the Microsoft tech, using the technology, potentially in complementing some of the capabilities that you've already got, and not necessarily saying Microsoft has to be everything to everyone. But certainly some of the automation capabilities and the low code, no code app capabilities that we're going to show today, for us, really think that it gives a game changer, even if you're not looking at a solution wide implementation, that you can actually make a real impact to the customer experience and the colleague experience by deploying Microsoft technology and complementing your existing systems through integration. And if you've seen some of our previous sessions and recordings around how we integrate with housing management systems and work alongside, you'll have picked that theme up. But yeah, for us, it's really about solving business problems, uniting people and processes to actually make an impact into your business and change the colleague and customer's experience. I think some of you are on the call already today, but as I say, in terms of the collective mix we've got across the housing and local government sector, we're really pleased to be working with some great brands, and really keen to continue this forum to make sure that our customers and our potential prospective customers have the opportunity to understand what's coming out of the Microsoft pipeline and interact with each other and share experiences. And if we can ever do collaborative engagements and projects and make that work commercially for associations and councils, we also consider that as well, because again, we don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel every time, and if you've got a problem that can be shared amongst peers, then we're all up for doing that. In terms of a little bit about what we do as a totality, we work across the Microsoft Business Application Stack. So you may have heard a lot of noise about the Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, which we're going to touch in today. We're a big user and a big implementer of the Power Platform, as well as more traditional capabilities that you've heard on in the sector like Dynamics 365. But we've also got business applications teams in SharePoint, in Teams, in the modern workplace to help deliver EDRMS and document management solutions, as well as data decisions with Power BI and clever capabilities like AI Builder. So some really interesting mix of capabilities that we're able to help housing associations realise, whether it's innovation or simply improving certain processes, or removing spreadsheets and paper-based compliance forms. Okay, so as I said, just to summarise again, the topic today is we've touched upon complaints many a time, and ASB and how we use the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 and its workflow and process tools to actually, in line with our accelerator, which has the ombudsman processes built in, how you as a housing association or council can track complaints and ASB and integrate that back into your master data with your existing systems, or bring the master data into the Power Platform or Dynamics. However, today is a little bit different. What we're going to showcase and touch upon, I think, because of the widespread news about damp and mold, we've got some basic processes that we've been working on to show you as an example, but also Ollie's going to touch upon some really fantastic features that Microsoft have released that we think can actually help you prevent and drive efficiency with complaints by understanding where potentially the bottlenecks might be in some of your complaints processes, and use the technology to understand regular themes to actually potentially not only resolve complaints in a timely manner, but actually drive I would say complaint deflection by understanding where some of the root causes are and where some of the things go wrong. So with that, I'll look to hand over to Ollie. We'll share these slides as we always do with you guys as a view at the end, and we've got a section at the end for 10 minutes of questioning. But if it's okay, Ollie, over to you to discuss today's demonstration.
Brilliant, thanks, Jordan. Just a quick one, you guys. Just a quick nod. Can we see the screen? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so yeah, thanks, Jordan. So what I want to take you through today, for those of you who don't know Dynamics, I'll just quickly introduce Dynamics and our mini accelerator that we've put on top of Dynamics 365. And then I'll sort of start touching on the damp and mold complaints process that we've done through case management within Dynamics 365. I'll take you through the stages and what we're recording and how that's pushed through. And then very quickly, I'll then move into something called Process Advisor, which is it's still in preview within Power Automate, which is one of the components of the Power Platform. But I'll be taking you through one of those journeys and actually looking at how we can measure the efficacy of this process and trying to work out maybe where the bottlenecks are, and trying to understand if there's a better way of either doing this process or highlighting some areas that need improvement. So that's really the schedule of today. So I'll start, as I always do, with a quick introduction to Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. So if you can see my screen here, what I've got here is one of our apps that we add on top of Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform, called the Crimson Housing Association app. And in here, we've got a menu down the left-hand side, which depicts a couple of modules and areas we can go to. I'm currently in the service module, and as you can see, I can have a look at some cases, some ASB incidents, some other areas around the system. But what I want to focus on today is cases, specifically an example of a damp and mold case, which we have sort of blue petered and gone through some of that process already. And what I'm going to do is just talk you through how we have implemented a suggested way of dealing with damp and mold complaints, and the typical stages in which data is captured. So what you can see here on the main form is kind of split into 3 columns. Here we've got a bit of information around contact detail, Alison Dickinson. So anybody who's seen any of my demos before, I do pick on Alison for a lot of my cases. And what you can see is some general details around the damp and mold case. So we've got a case title, the subject, we've linked her unit, and obviously the customer, which is where I've got this information from. You can see that there's a timeline in the middle, and what this will do is we'll start tracking all of the activities and the tasks that will have been completed or scheduled in that relate to this case, that either internal people need to process, or say, for example, it's communication. So emails coming in, emails going out, phone calls in, phone calls out, all of that sort of thing you would expect to see in the timeline. And then on the far right, we've got the recent cases. So we can, at a quick snapshot, see that we've got the damp and mold case, but there was a couple of other ones. There was a damp test. That was me messing around slightly earlier. But there's also a couple of other things that's very interesting. One of them being that the temperature of the boiler from an IoT connected device has spat out a warning. That's very interesting. So, and that may be something to do why there is some damp and mold elements going on here. So what can we do? What can we see? So up on this top process bar here, what we do is for each of the forms that we have within Dynamics, and the case being one of those forms, we identify, based on the subject being damp and mold, that this is a damp and mold process that has to be done through. And we can split this process into a number of stages to guide the users through those stages, so they know what to do next, what to pick up, and where to go. So the first one is identify. So if you click on that, you open up the first thing we need to do when a case is created, that we need to identify the customer, the specific unit that they're complaining about, some dates around date reported, obviously finding the subject, and when we would schedule an initial inspection. Once we've scheduled that initial inspection, it goes to the initial inspection stage, surprise, surprise, where we've got a schedule and the actual dates being captured, the severity of that, and what the cause may be for this specific issue. And then the next actions by. So who is it going to be by? If we've got some advice for the tenant, do we need to go in and do something? So at the first initial inspection, there is some advice given to the tenant. We also then will go into the next stage, where there's a follow-on inspection, which is then scheduled in. And then you can link in things like the follow-on inspector, so who actually is going to go out and do the inspection. And then is there initial advice or remedial actions being done? Yes or no, then can depict on what you want to be doing next. What we push on to is some further advice. So yes, we gave the tenant some further advice on that first follow-on inspection, and you've got some space to populate some of those advice. That could be a pick list of generic items, or it could be very specific. Depends on how you guys want to set up the process. But as a guide, we've just put in as a blank area for you guys to enter in some information. One of the further advices would be to actually schedule a device to monitor the moisture and the air quality. So we're actually going into what we've picked up from other areas is actually a Testos device. So there was, I think we were talking to a housing association. They were saying that these are the devices that we use to monitor that air quality. So actually, within that, we actually have a stage where somebody would go out, do an inspection, but also install a device, and then we can capture some additional information around that too, as well as the installation date and also the Testos device ID. Now that would be absolutely fantastic. It's not in this demo, but what we could do now is not only Alison's Dickinson boiler is using IoT to gain some information. What we could also do is pull in this Testos device in the same principle through IoT Hub, and then get that proactively creating cases and alerts for when the air quality it goes below acceptable thresholds, etc. What we then do is have a look at the device collection. So this is collecting the information, if it wasn't through IoT, to be able to go on and collect the information and do some analysis of that information, and whether a PIV, a ventilator, is required to try and clean up some of this air. And at the moment, this is PIV is required as no, so we don't have an installation date for that. We then go on to a final inspection where we would presume we've kind of done everything we needed to in terms of fixing up the mold and damp issues, and whatever remedial action the tenant and the engineers have done seems to have worked. So we would schedule in a final inspection and then go ahead and close the case. So again, this is a very much a suggested way in which Dynamics can actually cater for the damper mold process. This is very, very configurable, and there can be stages added, things taken away, additional data that can be captured. We can actually change that quite easily. But just to give you guys a flavor of what kind of processes that we'd expect to be installing within the case management area of Dynamics 365. So that's brilliant. That's got us maybe into capturing data in a consistent way, and all the things that happen within Dynamics 365 are at your disposal. So linking the property, linking the person, linking the activities, all of these things are now possible within Dynamics. That's great. You also have things like SLA, so service level agreements, which you can put on here for specific parts of this process. Say, for example, the time from identified to initial inspection needs to be a certain number of days or whatever it may be. Now that's great, and that does add a lot of value. The downside of that is that there isn't any way to understand the total efficacy of the process and try to understand how long certain processes or certain stages are taking to be done, and how we can filter that data with lots and lots of cases in lots of areas or regions or types of properties or time of the year, etc. So we do lose out on a lot of analytics to do with this process, that doesn't come directly out the box with Dynamics 365 as the form. That's very much the data capture and the processing element. So what we use is something called Process Advisor. Now, this is a part of Power Automate, so I'm going to jump into Process Advisor. And as you can see, whether you guys are familiar with Power Automate, Power Automate is effectively your automation workflow engine to a certain extent, where things can be triggered and actions can be done automatically, and data can be updated. It can be sent to different areas, a plethora of things that can be done within Power Automate. One of the newer features, right down on the bottom here, is called Process Advisor. Now, Process Advisor comes in a couple of different forms. The first one, which actually isn't in preview, this is live at the moment, is the ability to create what's known as a recording. Now, if you are in a certain scenario where you're creating a new process or you're testing a new process, what you can do is you can create a recording, and basically it's kind of like a screen scraping element, where if you click on fields and if you click on forms and screens, what the system does is record all of the actions that you've done, and that is effectively your process, and then you can work out how well you're doing in that process. Now, that's fantastic, that's a step forward, but that's not great if you have 30 engineers or 30 contact center agents all doing these processes. And what you actually want to understand is how effective in real life is this process, on real life cases, giving a lot of data rather than just a selected number of recordings that are stepped through in a really nice way. It might not be that appropriate to understand the effectiveness of it. So what they have actually done is created what's known as the data preview. So rather than recording specific processes for an individual, what it can do is, if you provide it the right amount of information from audit logs, processes, tasks and activities, what you can do is then start building up this picture of the process in its entirety. So what I'm going to go do here is just take you through a bit of a demo. I'm going to take you through data transformation part and then push on to something I've done a little bit earlier on, which has already done the analytics for me. So I'm kind of jumping between two processes here. One I'm going to start now, and one I've previously created. So just bear in mind that this doesn't take, it's not really quick to do this. It does take a little while for the engine to do the analysis. So what we have in here is, I'll just give it a process name. So damp test 1. And what it will do is it will take you through to the first area where we're trying to identify our data source. Now, the really cool thing about the Process Advisor is, yes, I'm going to take you through a demonstration now connecting to my Dataverse environment, because I want to be doing is collecting information about my case, about that top level process bar, and some auditing on that process bar when specific stages have been activated and gone on to the other stages. But as you can see, you can actually connect to any data source. So if, for example, you had your complaints process specifically around damp and mold, or any complaints process within a system that has some audit data, some information that we can do in terms of activities, you can pull that information in through Power Automate, and the AI engine will still work with that. So it's not the fact that you have to go through Dynamics to assess your processes. This can be any process in any system. As long as you can get access to the right activity data, you should be able to then generate an understanding of your processes. So I'm going to take you through the Dataverse side here. And what I'm doing is I'm connecting to a environment detail. Just going to choose the right one. So this is my domain, so connecting to Dynamics. And it's already authenticated me on, so I'm going to go ahead and connect to that data source. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand the tasks and activities that are being done through this process. So a bit of a Blue Peter moment. What we can actually do is, as you can see, as soon as you connect to the Dataverse, you have got all of these tables that are all of the tables natively in Dynamics. And that have been created custom for your specific implementation. So what I'm going to do is go and find the case entity. So I know it's called incident just because that's what the American guys call it. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to have a look for my damp and mold process. So that top level process bar at the top of that form is a specific entity and that actually holds some of the metrics and some of the details on the damp and mold process. So I'm going to highlight that as well. And I'm also going to choose my process audit table, which is a custom table, which when a stage is moved on that process, what happens behind the scenes, funnily enough, using Power Automate, is that I write a little audit file just to say when the stage has changed, what stage it's in, the start and end date, and a link to the case ID, just so that I can bring up some auditing information as well. So I'm going to go ahead and select those. So what you can see now is that I've got 3 tables that I'm looking to merge together. And what happens, I'm now into what's known as sort of transforming the data. Now this part is where you can do some really smart things around joining tables together to combine the information to get to the right activity or to get the right information to push onto your process. And there's lots of things that you can do here. This is, if for anybody knows, it's Power Query engine, and this is very sort of quite similar to the SQL side, so a little bit techy. But what you can do here is, and I'll just quickly show you an example of something. So I know that I'm going to be using the main table for my data, for my activity data, is that audit log. So I know I need to use that audit log, but I just need to combine a few things within this audit log once it loads, and combine these queries so I can get some data that's going to be useful. So I'm going to go ahead and merge queries. Now, for anybody that works with data, you should be really familiar with some of these scenarios. Joining data together is again a really good way. Certainly, if you're trying to just have one table with a combined amount of data. So you've got left outer joins, which is all from the left matching from the right, and that's pretty much what we want to be doing. I've got a couple of audit log items that I've got in my demo environment, and what I want to be doing is actually finding the specific process that deals with this. So in my audit log, what you can see on this side is a whole load of elements, but what you can see is the process instance ID. Now, if I was to do the process instance ID with the process flow instance ID, that is my linking, and I want to take in everything from my left outer and whichever ones matches through there. So what we do there, a little bit technical, but what we do there is just joining this information together so I can have enough information to effectively run the process advisor sort of AI generation and map my process together. So what you can see here, that it's created a new column on the processing audit log that deals with the damp and mold process. And what you can do here is select the right field. So what I want actually out of this is the incident, and say we'll do the incident name as well. So we'll do the incident ID, which we don't really need. So we'll just do those two. And what you can see there is that on this table, I can start adding lots and lots of fields. Now, what I don't want to do is sit here and configure this all. What you can do is you can add a couple of tables in, for example, for your users. So whoever's creating the cases, you can do user, you can do location, you can do all of those things, but you'll just have to grab the data from different tables. But what's really useful is, at the moment, I haven't written any code, and all I've done, typical, I get an API request error. All I've done is chosen the tables, and yes, you need to know a little bit about the structure of your system that you're trying to gather the information from. But if you know that, then you can, it kind of will guide you through how to capture this information, transform it. So what I would usually do here is then go on to the next part, which is then mapping that table into the process advisor. So I'm going to jump back to something I've done previously, where I've actually got some activity names, the case ID, the event end time, the location, which is interesting. So what I've done is I've taken out the location that's come from the unit that's been linked to the case. I've also got the origin, so how that case was created, whether it's through a phone call, whether it's through web, whether it was through face-to-face. I've also then linked the resource. So the resource is the case owner, for example, and that's then having a look at seeing the different effectiveness of people in the process, as well as the role. So the role would be a contact center agent or manager, that sort of thing, and then a timestamp for the event start. So the event start, the event end are really the key elements. Now, it's worth saying here that if you just have the event start date, and you don't have, say, for example, if this was external data and all you had was the event start date and not the end date, well, that's not a problem. So Process Advisor allows you to keep going through this, and what it will do is once it's analyzed your data and ordered those start dates, it effectively sort of writes in its own end date, and that's effectively the start date of the next stage along, based on the timeline of those start dates. Not 100% needed in terms of that end date, but it is again quite useful if you've got it, so you can actually see more of the timings might be a little bit more appropriate between those two. So what we would do there is then go save and analyze that. I'm going to cancel it because it takes a while to run through the engine. So what happens at this point is, so we've got our data, we transformed our data so that we can analyze it. So what's going to happen now is an AI engine will actually go ahead and look at all of this data we've supplied and try and map the process in the way in which people are using the system, and then give us some metrics around what's actually happening within that process. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the analytics for this. And you'll see a little Power BI item there. Yes, this is powered by Power BI in terms of the analytics side of displaying this information. So again, we're using the Power Platform components for this side. But what you can see here is, wow, okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Let's break this down. So right at the top level, we've got things like the case duration. So that's the median case duration, average case time, self loops. So that would be how many times this process has gone round and round again for a specific case, or loop cases where certain parts have gone round and there's a couple of stages that have been repeated. Now that's really key if this was if this was a process that needed to be done very, very quickly, and the reasons why we're looping is things aren't getting done right or things are being missed. Rework cases, same principle. How many times we've had to do rework, and then the resource count. So the resource count would be just the number of resources that we've specified in this area. So you can see this is the summary, and what we also have is paths, cases, and activities. So what it's done is taken all that information and says, actually, for all of these activities that we're doing and all of these instances of cases, there's 10 different paths these cases run through in terms of which stages they go through. And 133 individual cases have been assessed, and a total number of 13 different activities have been identified within this case, within this set of cases. And what you can see is the paths of frequency. So you can see that there's a variant ID of 1, 2, 3, and you can see all of these different cases. You can do it on time as well. So how long has this process been going? An average duration of cases over time. So you can see that from July to August last year, there was quite a few peaks in here, but generally speaking, it's kind of on that level. Now that'd be really interesting if you were looking at doing some process improvements and actually you'd started, say, for example, with your processes right at the beginning with very little or no automation, and then slowly but surely you're improving the case management element of this process. You would hope to see that the average duration of those cases would decrease over time, and you can do some analytics on that side. But let's start with this map. So the AI engine, what the AI engine has done for us is given us a visual understanding of the process. And I'll just jump to a bigger view of that. And this will load. And this is going to show us visually how all of our cases and the stages work together. And hopefully we can have a look and try and identify some bottlenecks or some things that are quite interesting whenever it loads. I'll start zooming in, and as you can see, everything starts with that case creation. That's no surprise. But what we can see there is a direct split. There's pretty much 50-50 split between an existing case. So it looks as though down this area there's a bit of a siloed process going on here. And what that is to do with is if somebody has already identified an existing case for damp and mold, that they would then link to the new case, update the details of that case, and then close the case. So that's a bit of a siloed process, but that's interesting that 50% of the cases that are raised already exist in the system. So maybe there's something in terms of, do we need to do something around self-service, around giving customers access to this data so they can see the progress of the case and maybe reduce that number down? Could be something we could look at. And then going on to the other side, so you've got initial inspection, installing the device inspection, some further advice, rejecting some cases, and you can see that the volume is going through here, then final inspection, creating resolutions, and then confirming the resolution with the customer. So you can see that these volumes of numbers are where the cases go, but what we can have a look at is the performance. So let's go on to performance, and straight away you can see, okay, there's quite a lot of time in case creation. That's really interesting. Is there anything we can do to speed that up? And as you can see, there's 17.75 days in terms of total duration, where we're obviously either trying to find the existing case, or we know that this case is a part of something else. Now, is there something that we can try and automate to get better with that one? The other side, you can see blaringly obvious that the further advice to final inspection is a really big amount of time, and you can see that's actually taking a lot of effort. So is there something that we can do in terms of providing that further advice? Is the advice or the templated advice that we're giving not sufficient? Is it taking too long? Are we using the wrong resources to provide that advice? Are we not using enough resources to provide that advice? There's lots of questions that having a look at this process might be able to pick up on, so you guys can assess where you need to go. And then the rework, again, if we have a look at rework in loop count versus outflow, you'll see that, again, no surprise really, the device inspection and further advice are the majority ones that loop around. So okay, well, there's nothing there, but if it was something else, is there something we can do to reduce that loop count, get to the answers and get to the fixes quicker? Well, maybe there is. So that's the mapping side, which is really, as you can see, is really quite powerful. You can really go to town with having a look at different elements there. What's really useful is actually having a look at the variance. Now, variance and paths is the same thing, and what it shows you is by percentage value the number of cases and the paths in which they've gone down. So like the map where it's just shown all 133 cases, this is splitting it down by the number of paths and unique paths. Now, it might be, this one's actually looking pretty good, like there's only five events to get through, and that's 50% of the cases. And as we go down in complexity, the volume of cases reduce. Brilliant. That's great. It could be that actually looking at, say, for example, the 6 levels of variance going through all of those 6 paths, there's 3%. If that was, say, 15-20%, you've sat there going, okay, so it's repeating quite a lot. Now, is there a reason? Do we need to do some investigation in those specific cases? And we can have a look at that. So again, something really valuable to try and find out the efficacy of this process. Now, that's great as an overall, as an overview, but the whole idea is, I was mapping things like location and specific resources that we're using that, and the origin of these cases. Yes, you can. So if anybody's familiar with Power BI, you also have the ability to sort of filter on that data. And what you can see is I've just chosen location and origin, but you can choose, as long as your data, you can transform your data in the right way, you can have that as an attribute you would be able to filter on. And you've got the choice whether it's event activity attribute, or is it a case attribute. So these two are case attributes. So location, where's the location of the case, and the origin, so when it was created. So I'm going to go and have a look at origin now, and I say, okay, so my median case duration is 1.29. But if I have a look at email, you'll see that not only does the case duration change, but actually the number of paths and the type of paths obviously change as well. And you can see that this one probably hasn't changed that much. So email, so we've gone up though. So actually through email is not as an efficient way of dealing with these versus, say, for example, let's have a look at maybe website. You would hope this would go down, and because of the self-service element of pushing things through the website. And yes, you can see that the website area is a lot more efficient than the phone channel in terms of the origin of these elements. And you can see actually there's a lot more that's a lot fewer types of paths this is going. There's only 4 types of paths for website versus the others. So you can see that you can start filtering this information in to work out the better way. Same principle with location. For example, if I was to look at Birmingham as my location, Birmingham's looking good, 1.29. It's got quite a number of paths though. That's a bit of a shame. Okay, how's Bristol doing? What are we doing with Bristol? Seems to be okay as well. Just load that. Oh, actually, maybe it's not. Okay, so you can see here, oh, there's a big stark difference between the Birmingham and the Bristol office. And we can see that there's some bottlenecks potentially still in those case creation areas and the further advice areas. Now, it may be that the Bristol office doesn't have the right number of staff or the right training to deal with the specific advice that we need to give out. Is there something we can focus on specifically around the Bristol office that can reduce that case duration down to the normal levels seen in the other offices? And is that something we can focus on and trying to work out a little bit more detail? So as you can see, lots of different things can actually help us understand the effectiveness of these processes and where we need to channel our energy into either automating or providing additional resource or thinking outside the box in terms of how this process can be better be done. So that's kind of a lot of what I wanted to share with you guys today. It very much is the process advisor is the tool to allow you to really dig down and analyze where your problems are. The resolution is then, using technologies like Power Automate, like Dynamics 365, like customer self-service in the portal, Power Pages, those sort of things to then try and increase that performance. So yeah, thanks very much. That's the end of the demo.
Thanks, Ollie. Okay, guys. So at this point, we'll sort of open the floor to discussion. We've got one from Merrick that's come through. I noticed that the engine has the circle of doom while loading data. Is this dependent on the size of data we have had, or we have had over 8,000 cases? How will this platform cope with that amount of data? I know there's only a demo environment, Ollie, in preview, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is a demo environment, so I haven't given it that much juice at all. It's worth mentioning that yes, the circle of death in terms of waiting for those elements is very much dependent upon the resources given to Power BI. But seen in other areas, Power BI is extremely powerful and can really tackle through that volume of cases. Wouldn't be an issue. What I would say is the process advisor doing the initial analysis, that will take time. So it's not something you can literally just click a button and then in a couple of seconds it will produce a wonderful mapping out like that. You will take some time for it to run through its analytics, but it is a powerful engine that's doing quite a lot of stuff. So what I would say is sort the data out, get it into the right format, start analyzing your data streams, and then come back to it once it's done its initial analysis. But the actual viewing through Power BI should be much more powerful than what I could show there.
Thanks, Ollie. One of the questions I remember I had when I was looking at this, or you showed me for the first time, was, wow, case management and case creation, and looking at how you can improve case management full stop to improve the customer experience. But what about processes that are common in housing, like where it's really important to understand where bottlenecks are, like voids and time to void, and other things like that might not be cases but might be like applications or lettings. Can you use this tool across those processes?
100%, yeah, absolutely. So the really good thing is it kind of is it's a bit of a bad label, in my opinion, that they've actually called it, when you're going through the mapping side, once you transformed your data and you go through the mapping side, it asks for the activity in the case ID. That case ID can be anything. It just needs to be a unique identifier for a record that is in control of the process. And you can combine multiple entities, as you can see, the multiple tables that I've shown in the data transformation side. So you could sit there and if you've got data or activities on a specific set of entities, you can combine that through Power Queries to get to the right data for the process advisor to analyze. So literally any type of process, you should be able to, as long as you can get to the data, you should be able to push that through the process advisor.
Perfect, thanks, Sol. A couple more questions come through. Sue's asked, she didn't know this facility existed. Could you clarify, is it only available within Dynamics, or is it a Dataverse feature or something else?
Yeah, good question. So it's not dependent upon Dynamics, but you do Process Advisor is a part of Power Automate, which is a Power Platform component. As I said sort of slightly earlier on, this is that the Process Advisor using data is still in preview. And again, unfortunately, I don't know when this is going to come out, but it won't be long. But you can, as of now, if you have a Power Platform license using Power Automate, you will be able to have a look at the Process Advisor module.
I think just to finish on Sue's point, a lot of housing associations, with Power Platform being a hot topic in the Microsoft world and the ecosystem, certainly because of the favorable licensing prices and the flexibility of what you can do with it. One of the things we've done with a number of different housing associations is a Power Platform Art of the Possible, where we've kind of touched upon features like this, Sue, that kind of allow you to understand a little bit more about what's in your kit bag, because there's a lot of pockets of things in the Power Platform that you might have licensing for already, but that you didn't know was there. So if anybody is interested in learning a little bit more about that, we'd be happy to help. Stephen's got a question. Have you used this Process Advisor with Capita, etc.? If yes, how useful and effective is it?
No, is the answer. Unfortunately, no. We haven't used it specifically for Capita, but really back to what I was saying before. As long as you can get the data out, if you can get the activity data out in a sensible way and get that transformed, there shouldn't be any issues with using data from external data sources. So whether you have to export that to to a CSV file or a SQL database, or if you can use some custom connectors through APIs to get that information through onto a data stream. All of those options, as long as you can get to the right data, you can just plug that straight into the process advisor, and it will map for you.
Yeah, and I think that's worth, again, just building on that point, Ollie, as you said, speaking across any different sort of existing housing management solution, whether you're Orchard, Active-H, or Northgate or anything like that, providing you can get at the data, or we can get at the data, and we've got various different means to do so. We can run that data through the process advisor. Sue's asked an interesting question again, and can it be used to retrospectively look at existing processes?
100%, 100%. And I think, when we're looking at building up a business case for process improvement and potentially a bit of a digital transformation need, it would be really, really useful actually if we could get to existing processes and existing data, understand the efficacy of that, and then do a direct comparison when a new process has been implemented using the new technology, whether it be Dynamics, Power Platform, or whatever. So 100%, yeah, that would be really, really good. If there was some legacy data out there or legacy processes out there that we know we're already using, and to try and work out, okay, if we've got a chance and the ability to redo this process, well, let's look at the effectiveness of it first, and then the areas that we need to concentrate on. So yeah, 100%, definitely.
I think it's a really interesting point, Ollie. I think from our perspective, when we first looked at this, there's one thing to say that, housing associations and councils with the process advisor have got a real opportunity to help remodel their as is to 2Bs. I think often it's a case of when organizations go through exercises and decide what do we want from a new process, or from a new solution that's going to map that process, it can be a bit of a, well, we don't know what we don't know. This kind of is another evidence mechanism and data capture to kind of understand and look at existing processes to go, where is it broken at the moment, and where can we fix that? What we also believe this is going to do is help drive adoption. So when we're implementing solutions or testing processes, you can start to actually see, is there things that can be tweaked and improved on this existing process that's been created, and where could enhancements in our existing environment be done to actually not just improve the customer experience, but the colleagues' experience in managing that? Have we created a bottleneck within the system that needs removing? So from our perspective, it gives you that insight. The one reservation or concern I think one of the team had about it was, are colleagues going to feel like it's another Big Brother feature where people are going to look at it and go, is this a problem because of the individual or individuals managing it? And I think what we've seen is that the likelihood is you're not going to look at using this across. You're going to look at using this where you've got high volumes amounts of processes or high volumes of teams. And this is not what this is about, to call out individuals. It's about looking collectively and holistically across processes across your housing associations and councils and going, where can we improve? Not a not a Big Brother to look at who's doing the best on processes. So I think it's all for the greater good across the solution. Any more questions from the audience? So we've got one more. Would a copy of the recording of this session be available to us plus the presentation? Yeah, of course. We'll as always create a YouTube recording of the event, and we'll put that on our channel. It's worth noting that if you put into YouTube Crimson Limited, if you check out our videos, all the past events that we've done for housing associations, and if you want to look at something a little bit different from higher education and the work we do with universities, they're all on there, and the previous events and sessions. But yeah, we'll send a copy of the slides and the recording to you guys so you can have another look at it. Please, if we've got a few more minutes, so if anyone does have any more questions, just drop them in the chat. how would you get involved in this sort of as a follow-on with this conversation? What we would typically do, and because Microsoft have got a lot of funding available now with the Power Platform and enabling and turning on the Power Platform capabilities, there's a number of different things that we can do. But what we've typically found is a great starting point is to get a workshop. Get a workshop organised where we can show you the art of the possible with some of the Power Platform capabilities. You know, we're talking that Power Platform can start from as little as £3.80 per user per month, which I think is a significant step change to some of the previous Microsoft licensing. And more importantly, you know, we can look and help you understand, if you've already got some Power Platform, how to actually make the most of some of the tools and new features that are coming down the line from Microsoft. Very often, Microsoft are keen to let us do cool stuff with you and fund things like 5 to 10 to 15-day proof of concepts. And we've got good examples of like when we've worked with Tendring District Council to work on an ASB process where they've partially funded some of the engagement that we've done there. So start with a workshop. We'd love to come and speak to you guys and walk you through the art of the possible, the Power Platform. But like I say, there may be some funding on the horizon if you guys wanted to explore some of this as part of some of your innovation budgets. Now, I know with the rent increases and everything that's going on and cost of living crisis going up, but like I say, if Microsoft and ourselves can help out to sort of help drive some innovation to prove the value of the solution, we'd be happy to. Doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I'll close on saying if you can, we're always looking to improve these events. If you could kindly complete the feedback survey, we always look to see how we can improve these events, and if there's any particular topics you want us to cover in the coming months. We're looking at doing something a little bit more detailed and involved about damp and mold management in sort of 6 to 8 weeks time when we run our next event. So look out for that. Building on the process that Ollie showed, but actually looking at front-end power access to capturing that and using some clever insights, AI, and potentially hooking that up to IoT devices to actually see how you can manage that whole process end to end. And as always, the housing breakfast updates are on our Crimson Housing LinkedIn page. So if you scan either one of those QR codes, you'll be able to get access to both of those. But other than that, hopefully that was really useful to you guys. And Ollie, thanks again for walking us through some of the latest capabilities that's just hot off the press. As I say, do get in touch with us if you'd like a Power Platform Art of the Possible workshop. And wishing you a hopefully not too cold but fruitful day. But thanks again, guys, and yeah, looking forward to speaking to you again in 8 weeks' time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.